Welcome to Her Love of Sports with your host, Katie Hamilton.
Welcome to Her Love of Sports, everyone. There is no better way to kick off season 3 than having this special guest join us today. She is a well-respected sports reporter, anchor, host, and emcee. She is a pioneer for women in the sports industry, a local legend, and currently the host at Ocean 98.5. It's Mira Laurence.
Oh my goodness, you're going to make a girl cry with an intro like that. Wow. Thank you so much, Katie. So great to be here with you and talking sports, and so proud of you and everything that you've accomplished, and congratulations on season 3.
Oh, thank you, Mira. I'm so excited. It's been such a long time in the making having you on Her Love of Sports. When I first started Her Love of Sports, I knew right away that the first person I want on is Mira Laurence.
Oh, goodness.
Just from our history and just everything that we'll get into. But I am just so excited to have you here today, highlight your career, and just hear everything.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's been a good ride. It's been a wild ride. So it's good to be here, and I'm always happy to talk sports.
I know, right?
Right?
Love it.
I'll always talk sports. So you ask me whatever you want, and I'll answer whatever you want.
Amazing. Okay, let's start in. So we first met. So it was probably, I was trying to count it. It was about 4 years ago in 2019. I was over in Vancouver taking some broadcast classes, and I knew you we didn't know each other, but
Right.
I knew you from back years ago when you were doing reporting, and you were reporting for the Royals, doing some interviews.
Right.
And I was working for the Royals, and I remember seeing you, and I thought, like, wow, what a strong, powerful woman in the sports industry. And I looked up to you so much.
Oh, goodness.
I did. And then when I found out that you were over in Vancouver, I was like, I'm going to reach out to Mira and see if I could shadow her.
Yep.
And you responded right away, and you were just so welcoming and so warming. And we're like, absolutely, like, brought me under your wing, and I got to shadow you. So that's when we first met.
Right.
And I thank you for that, because that's what really kind of started my first step into the broadcasting sports industry.
And now look at you. You're a
Now we're
superstar.
here.
I remember receiving that email and reading it. And I think what stood out to me is, one, how interested you were, how well written the email was. And obviously you were from Victoria and you wanted to come over and job shadow. And I was like, absolutely. And then I reached out to the Canucks, because I was on the Canucks beat then, and just said, hey guys, can I get a media pass? I have a young lady coming over from Victoria that's getting into the business, and I want to show her what like a professional organization looks like. So then we hung out up in the broadcast area, and we did a little tour of Rogers in the booth and everything, where John and Shorty hang out and do the broadcast, and it was a lot of fun. So you know what, I'm just happy that I was able to be a part of your great story and what you've done and where you're going. So
Oh, thank you. I mean, I am so grateful for that experience. And it's definitely one of the highlight experiences of my life, was doing that. And it just happened to work out that the time that I was available, because I was over there, was a Canucks Toronto game.
Yep.
And everyone was so jealous, being like, how did you get tickets to this game? Like, out of all the games. And it was so great. But just seeing you and watching you do your work and interacting with everyone, interacting with the executives, and then coming down with you in the tunnel doing your, during the periods, doing your interviews.
My walk-offs?
Yes. That was just so great. And what I got from it a lot was I was just kind of like a fly on the wall, but just watching how you interacted with the players, with the coaching staff, in the scrums.
Yep.
I still think about that when I'm going into like my interviews with players.
Good.
Just because I was like, just the way that the players seemed so comfortable with you and respected you, and your knowledge. And so, I take lots of that interaction that we had into what I do now. And then also, like, I take that for myself, is like, sometimes, like, if someone reached out to me and they're like, hey, how did you get into the industry? I try to be like, oh, here's my moment, kind of being like a Mira for Katie, and try to do my best, just like how you did.
Good. And that was probably one of my favorite things about working in television media, and even radio media, was being able to have people come in intern and shadow and just maybe pass on some of the knowledge that I have. And everybody does things differently, right, in the business. And for me, I've always found success with interviewing being conversational style. Right. And it's just like, it's easier to have a conversation than just to fire who, what, where, when, and why at somebody and hold a microphone in front of them. And I did that with the Canucks. I did that with the Royals. I did that with a bunch of teams. And it was like, I find that's when you got the best answers out of people, is when it's a skill to listen. right? Everybody can talk, but if you take a moment and you actually listen to the answers, and in advance, you're prepared as to kind of where you want to go with an interview. But if you stop and listen, then maybe the interview that you thought you were going to go in this direction, you get a nugget there. And then you go in a completely different direction and you're like, oh, I got a golden story here, right? And it's like, and I think that happens when you listen to people.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And then, yes, so I'm from Victoria.
Yes.
And you're from Victoria, went to Vancouver. And then I think it was just a couple of weeks later, it was announced that you were coming back to Vancouver Island to work for the brand new professional sports team, which was so amazing. And we'll get more into your journey of how you got into the career. But then we got to work together because you brought me on. I got to work under you and kind of see how you worked in the communications and the live broadcasting and operations and help you out from there. So that was really a sweet journey, I thought, for me, is how we met, and then we transitioned, and then we ended up working together. I'm
like old luggage. You can't get rid of me or something, right?
I love it. Okay, so let's dive in. So let's start with how you got into the industry, or what made you want to become a sports reporter?
So, I think, it all started. I was an only child until I was 21. So my dad is a broadcaster, or was a broadcaster. My grandfather was a broadcaster, and I was a bit of a Tom girl. My dad was into sports. He played slow pitch. We're from Saskatchewan, so curling, obviously. Hockey, he would do some color or play-by-play when necessary, and those types of things. Plus, I was either a rink rat or a radio station rat. So it just kind of came naturally to me, and I would always be there keeping score for my dad or watching him curl. I don't know if it's because they couldn't afford a babysitter or what, but I was always hanging out at some sporting event, and I just gravitated towards sports, and I would watch sports with my dad. He had the big cat's corner and the little cat's corner when we would watch TV and watch hockey and those types of things. So it was just something that I felt like a natural connection to. So that happened. So that's kind of been my entire life. And then when I started in the industry, I worked in cable television. And one of the things that I developed was a program for high school students to learn how to shoot a camera, interview people, and then also worked a lot in live productions of hockey games, because in small town Saskatchewan, you go to junior hockey games in the winter, and that's what you do, right? So it was, that's kind of where I got my start, and realized that I liked that aspect, that I didn't necessarily want to be a hard news reporter, but I did love the thrill of the chase, the setup, the tear down, the how things are constantly changing, that you have to keep up on things all the time. So that's how I ended up being involved in the whole sports industry, and that's kind of how I ended up gravitating towards sports versus typical traditional reporting.
Right. And did you play any sports growing up?
I did. I played volleyball. I was a dancer too.
Oh.
Yes, I did ballet, jazz, and some musical theater. So I did that. I was terrible at basketball, and I golf as well too.
Okay.
So those were kind of my sports.
Amazing. I love it. And then, so what brought you out west then? So you're from Saskatchewan. I know you're a Rough Riders fan.
Obviously, if I'm from Saskatchewan, I have to be, right?
Of course. So yeah, what brought you out west then to the island?
Okay, so funny story is I was 24, 25, working in cable television. And at that time in Saskatchewan, most of my friends were getting married, starting to have children, doing those types of things, settling down, buying houses. And I was like, oh dear. Oh, no, not for me. And I was like, there has to be more to life than just getting married and hanging out in the garage, playing darts and drinking Pilsner beer. So I was like, I got to get out. And so I was looking for a way to kind of expand myself. And my mom actually told me about a TV station that was opening in Victoria, and it was called the New VI. And so put my resume together, applied, and I applied for an on-air position, which might have been a little ambitious at the time, but they had already hired all their on-air staff, but they kept my resume on file. So about 2 months later, when they were starting to hire their technical staff, the behind-the-scenes people, their camera people, studio ops, those types of things, I got an email from a gentleman named Ed Yu. And he's in Toronto now, and just saying, we would like to offer you a position as a general technical operator at the New VI, blah, blah, blah. What would your salary expectations be? And I was like, excuse me? And so I was like, is this real or is this not real?
Wow.
Right? So it was just like, I kind of followed up carefully with a couple emails to him. And like, this is like back in 2001. So that's when this happened. And it was like, okay, we went back and forth. And then all of a sudden, this package came from Chum Television in the mail for me to sign and sign off on. And so my newspaper in Yorkton actually did a story for me that was hanging in the New VI forever. I have it framed at home now, but it was like local broadcaster hired strictly over email, because back then you didn't do any of that, right? Like, so it's like there was no in-person interview. So I threw caution to the wind and I was like, okay, let's do it. So basically I sold everything I owned and drove my Z24 Cavalier. You probably don't even know what kind of car that is, but it was like, I thought it was pretty cool back in the day. And I moved out to Victoria to take a job at a brand new TV station that was opening up and having no idea what I was doing and knowing nobody.
Wow. Wow.
I took a gamble on myself.
You did.
Yeah.
You created an opportunity
Yes,
for yourself. And
totally.
and you took it. Wow, that's amazing.
Right.
So how did it go then? You came on over.
Yeah.
You've been here kind of ever since, right? Back and forth from
Totally.
Vancouver, the mainland, and here. But then how did it go when you got here?
So when I got here, we weren't on the air yet. So we were still practicing. The building was still under construction. So when we started, I was behind the scenes. I was doing in-studio camera work, and I was doing some lighting. I was doing a little bit of audio work with an intention in my head that I was going to move up and that I was going to somehow figure out a way to do some work in the sports field there. So I befriended like the sports department, and as I was working behind the scenes, proved myself to be a capable worker and a bit of a keener. And then I started volunteering in the sports department to go and shoot a hockey game here or there. Because I missed the dance and the flow of shooting hockey and doing that. So I decided that I would volunteer my services to do that. I did that. Somebody left, and then I ended up being part-time sports videographer and sports shooter, and then part-time operations. Then I moved strictly to full-time videographer in the sports department. Then I moved to full-time 11 o'clock sports anchor, and then I moved to the sports director's position and ran the sports department. So all in all, I was at that company for 14 and a bit years. So, but just created opportunities for myself, right? Like just kind of I was young, I was ambitious, I was hungry for it, I was creative, and obviously very competitive. So it was just like, nope, this isn't good enough. I'm going to keep moving. I'm going to keep pushing myself. So that's how I ended up here.
Wow. And to have it start from just that, I'm going to apply for this position, and then we get an email back. And that's what I kind of think of even for myself through this industry, is lots of it is making the most of the opportunities you have. So kind of saying yes to anything that gives you experience and something you can put on your resume, and build those connections. And look where it gets you, right? You go from being putting your resume in, and now you're the sports director, and have done all of that, all of those experiences wrapped into one. So I think it's amazing. And that's what I say is just like take those opportunities when you have them, and then make the most of them. And if they aren't there, reach out and create those opportunities for yourself, right?
And it's like, kind of sell yourself, or like you said, be willing to do something you necessarily don't want to do. But, and the more I used to tell some of my interns in the TV world, I would be like, learn as much as you can. Like, make yourself, one, the obvious choice. If you're an intern and then they're hiring, that you can stay on a permanent position. But two, know how to run a camera, know how to interview people, know how to edit, know how to do it all. So the more you know, the more valuable you are to the company. Right. So that's how that all happened. That's the story.
Wow, that is the story. So 14 years you were with them. And then did you transition? Was that part of when you were doing your Royals, or did you transition to your Canucks role?
So after that, I did a little bit of work at UVic for a while with athletics and recreation. And then I went, I was involved, I was on a few boards, in the nonprofit world, because I was really involved when I was in my TV world in the community as well too, like with emceeing events and doing different things to kind of build profiles. So I did a bit of that, and then I just wasn't sure if I was done with media yet. So then, as I'm at my my nonprofit job, I hear about a new station that's opening up in Vancouver. So I apply for that. And I knew a couple people at Rogers at the time, and I went to those people and kind of used that as an in. Like, as you said, you get to meet people, and those people can open doors for you, right? So that you're not just in the stack of resumes. So they took a gamble on me, because a lot of times they'll just recycle the same people in Vancouver, and hired me to be part of the launch of the morning show. So I was on the first broadcast of Sportsnet 650 as well, too, in 2017.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah,
that's
it was
why
cool.
you're a pioneer for the women in the industry. And so, what was it like?
I'm old.
No, it means you're amazing. It's amazing. So, a role model. So, what was it like being there? So the sports industry, radio, television, and like pro sports like the NHL is very male-dominated industry. So what was that like for you coming in, starting that morning show and joining the team?
So it was interesting, because I was like the Victoria girl, the small island girl. And at the time when I was hired, I was the only female voice on the radio, which also kind of felt like back in the day in TV. Like now we see tons of women on anchor desks, tons of women out there reporting, people doing podcasts and things that you're doing. But like, it almost felt like broadcasting 2.0. You know, it was just like, am I back here in this man's world, trying to put my elbows up and get a little bit of breathing room and speaking room? And, you know, it's a bigger market. So people operate different in a bigger market. There's maybe more ego in a bigger market. There's more competition and stuff. But I just kind of stayed true to who I was and my style of interviewing and my style of going about talking to players and the way I hold myself professionally. And it worked. As you said, in the locker room, you know, people, the players seem to respect me, or like, no, Myra's going to ask the question, or those types of different things. Plus, I wasn't asking the same old questions that they always get asked as well, too. So, yeah, I liked it. I did like it in Vancouver, but I really missed Victoria too, and I missed like the grassrootsiness of it all. Like, I'm so glad that I got to work in professional sports and see how our professional organization is properly run. I mean, you wouldn't know by their record these days for what's going on with the Canucks, but just to have that experience was really great. But yeah, you're right. It was still like on the beat when I was, and by the beat, I mean like you're going to the practices, you're doing some post game. For a while, it was a bit lonely again, because I was the only female for a while there too. So, and then my friend Megan, who's now my friend, came in, and she was doing some editing. So she and I became good friends. So I felt like I had a buddy, right? Because a lot of the gents that I was working with were younger than I was, up and coming, you know, really like they were me 15 years ago. And so I could see that in them, that they were chasing it, right? Chasing the dream, really excited if they were asked to be on the panel and on TV. And that's when I realized it was time to come home, because I was like, I'm not chasing that anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to move to Toronto. I don't like, I sat on an anchor desk for a decade, right? And it was just like, I knew that it was just like, you know, media was is such a great vehicle for me, and sports was that it opened up so many doors for me and allowed me to create so many great relationships and connections. And that's basically what I love about this industry, and why I felt the need to come home and connect with a sports team in town here and be able to kind of build that community again. So I think, you know, looking back on my Canucks experience, like I said, so glad I did it. So lucky that I had an opportunity to launch another station and be there for that. But I think, you know, 28, 30-year-old Myra would have been like, woohoo, like, let's go. 40-year-old Myra was kind of like, okay, I see a difference in me and I see a difference in them. And maybe it's time to say, I'm done with this.
And maybe that makes it feel better leaving, right? That it's like, it's on your terms.
Totally.
And it's how you wanted to do it. And you hit your check marks of what you were wanting to do with it. And
like,
easier to step away.
Totally. It was easier for me to say this time around, okay, this is my decision, and I'm okay with it. I made the decision, and it's like, all right, maybe I don't need to work in media anymore.
Well, I'm so happy you took the Connect job.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I got
See,
to meet
maybe
you,
that's why
right?
I took the Connect job, right? Maybe that was like serendipitous, right?
You inspired BCIT students.
There you
And
go.
that's what it was, because we were in class and they would have, every once in a while, would have a speaker to come in at the last end. And so it was usually males, and it was lovely hearing their stories, and they were all different, and they were great with answering questions. And then they mentioned that Mira was coming. And I was like, yes, I actually just reached out to her. She's reached back, and now she's being someone in here, and I get to learn her story. That's amazing, because it was the same. It was, I hadn't had a woman in the industry that I could look up to or ask questions, and someone that would be willing to answer those questions and kind of give a helping hand and be a mentor. So having you as that really helped me, and saw where someone can go. And from us both being, I know you're Saskatchewan, but both being from the island, it's so much different than going over to the mainland, right? And Vancouver Island, like we do now, but we didn't have pro sports.
Right.
So the next closest thing is the Canucks in the mainland.
That's right.
If you don't want to go to Toronto. But that's a big jump from Victoria to Toronto as a youngin' or even older.
Yeah.
So seeing you, having you there, it was amazing. So
good.
It was great. Yeah. Great to see you do your role. And then coming back to the island, which was also another great thing, because I was like, wow, now we have a professional sports team on the island, which is, we haven't had before, which is so amazing. Yeah. And then it was announced that you were as a director of communications and broadcasts and all of that. So that was very exciting to have you come join this.
It was good. It was like, and then I got to be the start, like a part of another startup, right? So I seem to like go into these situations where it's all starting, and it's like everything's fresh and new, and just kind of getting established. The new VI, Sportsnet, and then obviously the professional soccer team here in town. So. Yeah, I like to be part of the early chaos, I suppose. So that's just my thing. But yeah, no, I felt like I needed to come home, and just was like, this feels like home. Obviously, I'm from Saskatchewan, but Victoria is my home. I'm not married. I don't have children. I mean, I do have a relationship, but it's like, and like I said, when I was over there, I missed my relationships. I missed my community, and that's why I was like, okay, maybe at this point in my life, like this is what matters. So here I am. Now you guys are stuck with me again.
Here we are.
Right?
I mean, it's amazing. And then you're so big in the community. The community loves Mira Laurence. Mira Laurence loves the community. So what's your relationship with that? And then you transitioned from your job with the soccer team to a community role.
Right. So I went back to the nonprofit that I had left when I went to Vancouver, because they needed some help and they were going through a transition. So I went over there to help them merge basically two nonprofits together. So that was exciting. And then after that, I went and worked at, I was the executive director at Oakland's Community Association. So then I ran a community center in COVID, where we there was no rec programs. It was childcare. It was a lot of work. I mean, but we were doing great community work, keeping the doors open so that parents could go to work, and taking care of kids and making sure they were masked, and like updating policies on the daily, because as things were changing with COVID. So that was great. And I got a lot of good learning experience there, and then was approached by a local radio station here in town by some people to apply for a position that was vacated by a good friend of mine, Robin Farrell. So she was the radio side at Bell Media when I was the TV side. So we did a lot of things together. So I ended up, to make a short story long, over time, had an interview, had a tryout or a session to see if I was compatible with my co-host AJ. Turns out they liked our sound, which is great. And now I've been doing that for a while and having a lot of fun getting up at 4:50 in the morning.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it how early you get up. But I remember, the first time I was driving to my work where we used to work at together, and I turned it to the ocean and your voice was on, and I was like, that's Mira.
That?
I was like, it's Mira. And I just, so now I listen to it all the time because I know it's Mira, and it feels like that connection, and
awesome.
And it's awesome hearing our community radio and just hearing those experiences and just knowing what your career was like. And now here you are being a voice for the island is just, it's it's great too.
It's wild. It's almost like it's come full circle, right? Because when I came back to Victoria, I didn't come back thinking that I would ever work in media in this town again. And I was okay with that. And then, you know, I went through a couple different experiences while I was here. And then media basically came back for me, right? By people saying, you need to apply for this job. You need to apply for this job. And then the then program director actually reaching out to me saying, hey, can we talk? So, and here I am, like a few months later, having a really good time playing media again and playing radio. And this time it's with music. It's not just sports talk radio, which it was when I was in Vancouver. Not only was I on the beat there, but I also hosted, when Canucks were out of town, was Sportsnet Tonight. So it was a 4-hour show. And basically, you know, Vancouver, all they want to do is talk Canucks. Maybe they're talking Lions now, though, too, right? So, but it was just like, it was a lot to host a one-person show for 4 hours of talking, right? And talking sports. And again, you know, being a woman talking in sports, and I don't want to play the gender card, but it was like, you know, things change so fast in the world of sports that I had to listen to the podcasts over and over and over again to make sure that I was up to date. And it's like, and be knowledgeable, right? Know what I'm talking about. Because if I make a mistake versus somebody else making a mistake, I felt that I would be looked at in a different lens, right? That it's just like, well, she doesn't know what she's talking about. And I think that maybe that's what's made me successful in the media world, or I guess you could call it successful, but it was like knowing how to prepare, right? Or just being ready and putting in the work. Like when you're young, you have the energy to put in the work, but just knowing, being confident and knowing what I was talking about, so that no one could pull a fast one on me or make it sound like, oh, there's that Mira reporter again, gonna ask me about what color my socks are or something, right? Like, it's just like, you know, knowing the record, knowing what's happening. And then it's like also throwing in a little bit of humor and personality in my interviews too. But definitely being prepared, I think, has helped me, and knowledgeable. You know what I mean? Like knowledgeable, and actually seem like you're invested. And even if you aren't all that informed, like even if there's something, a curveball comes at you, fake it till you make it. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
You know, it's just like, act like you know. And that's the best thing. Confidence is key in our industry, for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of that too. We do have to kind of seem like we're more knowledgeable, or we have to stay up to date, but at the same time doing that extra research so that we are prepared, so that if someone questions you, that you do know what you're talking about. Right. It also helps everything with your reporting skills. So totally. it definitely is a benefit in a sense too. Because
but we had to work harder. Like that's the thing. It's like working harder because, you have to put in that extra work so that you don't trip up and somebody just thinks that you're silly and, oh, well, that's nice. That's cute. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or mispronouncing names.
Oh.
Is that a big one? I feel like that would be one.
I remember one time I mispronounced a name and I was mortified. Not one time. I'm sure I've mispronounced. But there was a baseball player named Jim Thome. And I remember on my broadcast, I called him Jim Thome. Because his last name was spelled Thome. And it was just like, that's not his name, Mira. And I was just like, no. So, you know, and then you just kind of like feel the shame. But it's like, you got to let like water off a duck's back. Like to do jobs like this, you have to have thick skin. And you have to be able to show up, deliver. And whether it's an award-winning broadcast or a dud, you just got to be able to move on the next day because it's done. Right. And it's like, you can't get caught up on like, that was fantastic. Look at me. Or, oh my gosh, what did I do out there? Right. So it's like, you got to keep rolling and keep moving forward. And, you know, I'm happy. Like I was thinking about this before I came to our interview today, and about my experiences and how I was going to share it with you. You know, social media, when I started, wasn't as prevalent and wasn't as much of a tool as it is now. Right. So people would maybe email me and say things, and like, not everybody's going to like me or my delivery or those types of different things. But I really admire folks like you that are just getting into the business, and friends like Jody Vance and Linda Steele that are not afraid to talk about issues that are out there, but they get ripped on. You know, like people are keyboard warriors and will just say, whatever they want and hurtful things, right? And I've had hurtful things said to me, like, but it was filtered more so through the assignment desk and the general mailbox, not something that I can see over and over and over again and allow it to affect me. And we're all so reliant on our phones that it's just like, it can be a lot, right? And it's just, I think the thing is, you have to learn how to shut that out, right? Again, you have to have the thick skin and water off a duck's back, because if people who don't know you are going to attack you on Twitter or whatever it is, their opinion doesn't matter. Half the time they're trolls, right? And it's like, you just have to be able to focus on what's important and like be able to have a filter, because you don't want to get involved in any of like that garbage, you know what I mean? Or start in a Twitter war and start writing things that might come back to bite you in the butt at some point as well too. So having a smart mind of being able to say, you know what, that really sucks, but I'm not going to pay attention to that. I'm going to move on. Like, I don't know this person. This person doesn't know me. They don't know what they're talking about. And, you know, I'm going to take the fifth here, and I'm just going to take a pause and not respond to this. So knowing that is, I think, a key thing too, because employers are watching your social media as well too, and like how you're reacting, how you're interacting, those types of different things. And like I said, you don't want to say something that the company's going to be like, Katie, want to come to my office, please? Right? So once it's out there, it's out there. So that would be a piece of advice I would offer any young woman or any young person getting involved in the industry, is like, mind your social, right? And take a breath before you respond to absolutely everything out there.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice, because it definitely, with interactions, or even when you're interviewing somebody, and it could be post game and it's a coach, and there's a question that maybe your director tells you that you want to ask, and it's going to be an uncomfortable question, and you might get an uncomfortable answer back. It's very easy to take it personally, even though it's not at you. It could be, well, maybe the coach's team just lost and they had a lead or something like that. So keeping that in mind to, yes, take it in, hear what they're saying, but don't take it too personally or let it slide and continue doing your work, I think is so key, because you never know. It's sports, it's passionate, it's competitive. So you never know what answers you're going to get.
Right. And they could be grouchy. Like I was interviewing the Canucks when Travis Green was the coach, right? And I actually got along with Travis, but he could be like a prickly pear, like a lot of times, right? Like, and you could just tell when he was doing these media scrums or pressers at the end of the game, like, you know where he wanted to be? Anywhere but there. Like, and it was just like looking at us, like, and if you asked something like the typical, well, what do you think happened in the third period there? I was like, well, we didn't play good and they scored 3 goals. Like, you know what I mean? And then he answering these questions, and you're like, do I want to slink in my chair for just asking that? But
like, you know, and then you question, it's like, should I be a reporter?
Right. Like, am I good at my job or am I not? So, and it's like, and is he going to be like that all the time? Like, is he going to be like, oh, there's the girl that asked the question. Nah, they move on.
Yeah, they won't remember it, right? No. It's just another question of the reporter.
Like, just another media person asking another media type question. So,
but yeah, I think you mentioned it before too, with just the respect of talking to, and I mentioned it, how the athletes respected you when you were asking questions and stuff like that. But like you said, it's like finding those golden nuggets, but also asking kind of questions to get them open up. So you're not just getting that strict, like, yeah, we played good, everyone's working hard, we're a team, we're ready for the third period or something like that, right? It's kind of getting a little bit more context, and a little bit more.
And you have to build that trust though, right?
Like, it doesn't come just.
No, and it's like, especially with professional athletes, and I find it mostly, like, definitely with hockey players too, they are very guarded, right? Like, they're not really telling you anything about their life, and they will give you the generic answer because they're just like, yeah, okay, let's just get this over with. Unless you can find an angle of something different, right? Like, how do you wedge in there where you get them to show a little bit of personality? And that's the great stuff, right? Everybody now, like, you know, Canucks are making their own videos. Everybody's making videos in the dressing room and stuff. And that's what the people want to see. Like, they don't want the standard, we got to put in 110%. We can't worry about them. We got to play our game. And, you know, it just wasn't our night. No bounces. Everybody's holding the stick a little too tight. And it's just like, dear Lord, please stop. But it's just like, if you can find a way to, like, do so, like, I guess get those answers or let somebody else answer those questions. But like, you know, ask hockey related questions or sports related questions, but then like do a little bit of digging into like their personal life, the music that they're listening to. And it's just like, okay, who's the guy in here that picks the music before the game, right? Like who's the music picker, right? Who's given the best pregame hype speech when you guys are in here, or the introduction, starting lineup, like those types of different things. Be like, oh, Antoine Roussel, right? And it was just like, oh yeah. And then, you know, what's the favorite game on the plane? What are you guys playing on the plane these days? You playing cards? No, so-and-so brought this game over from France and we're all playing this game and everybody likes to play it and everybody's standing in line. We draw cards to see who plays it. Like, you know what I mean? Like just little nuggets that's something different, and it'd be like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like something that will get people's attention where they're not just like, I don't know if you've ever watched Charlie Brown, but Peppermint Patty makes this sound. It's like, wah, 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 wah. And it's just like, it's just noise, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You have that. There's the typical answer that comes out. But yeah, if you can get those nuances, or even when you're asked that question, you might have a set of questions already in your head. Like this is one, this is follow up, this is the final one.
Yep.
But it's listening to their answer, even if they are maybe being a little bit more open with their answer.
Right.
And maybe that second question doesn't actually connect with what they're talking about,
right,
or what's next. So it's kind of being flexible.
Totally.
Right. Of being like, okay, did they say something that maybe I can grab that onto that and start making that kind of a topic or conversation?
Yeah. And that's what I mean when I say the art of listening, right? Like you have your question, your follow up, and your final question already ready in your back pocket. You're ready to go. You're prepared. But then you get, like you said, the first question, and it was like, oh, wait a second. So maybe I don't want to ask that second question because I got a little piece of gold up here. And it's like, well, what did you mean when you said blah, blah, blah? You know, then you might get a real answer out of somebody, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's where the art of listening comes in, and like really paying attention when people are talking to you and giving them like or else you'll just be like holding a microphone going, 110%. Got it. Right.
Right. Or the awkward one is if they answer your second question in their first question.
Yeah.
So then you ask the second. I've been through this. We can remove this. But like when you ask the second question, but you don't realize because you're not listening. It's just the typical like bobbing your head going like this. Okay, waiting for my second question to come. But yeah, the actual listening and taking it in.
Right. Because then it's like, then they know you're not listening. Right. It's just like if you ask the second question, they're like, I just said, blah, blah, blah. And they're asking the second question. And it's just like, okay. So then like, it's important to develop that relationship too. It's like, okay, well, if Myra's asking me this, I know she's listening. And it was like, oh, well, can you tell me more about this? And it's just, well, here's what I meant. We got this dog because, and here's why he's named this and those types of things. So I feel like that's important. Like everybody wants to be seen and wants to be heard. Right? And not just like that you're wasting somebody's time, right? Or that I'm just going through the motions. And, if somebody's going to take the time to talk to you, or I have always felt like storytelling, if somebody's going to take the time to tell me their story, then I need to take the time to respect that story and to put together a good piece. And to listen to what they're saying. So, and this is theirs. And as a professional, I have a responsibility to do a good job and tell that story properly, not just slap chop it together and do that. So that's kind of how I've operated in the media world. And it seemed to have served me well. So
you've accomplished so much in your career.
Oh, God. Again, that means I'm old.
No, so much amazing things in your career, so much. And now you have this great position. We love hearing you on the radio.
Thank you.
Amazing. Do you have any other kind of career goals or checkpoints that you want to hit?
Yeah, maybe work at Thrifty Foods and stock shelves one day. No, probably. There's some things that I want to do. Like I'd like to learn Spanish. I'd like to do some voiceover work, those types of different things. I think it'd be great to have something like you do, but I just don't have the time right now, right? I need to focus on making my show really good, but eventually kind of looking at like doing something fun, like being able to do media things for fun, not necessarily because you need a paycheck, right? And it's just, I look at both, I mentioned them already, Jody and Linda and what they're doing. And I know they have a show here on Check News. and I watch it on Thursdays. It's on my PVR. We're friends through social media. I actually asked Jody. I think I have a girl crush on Linda Steele because I love her voice. But I actually asked Jody before I took the job at Ocean 98.5. I was like, do you think I should get back into radio or am I nuts? And she's like, do it. So, being able to have like a fun show like that or hosting something like that, like once a week where it's.
You'd be so good at that.
It'd be fun.
It'd be so entertaining.
Well, I would like, it would be nice to do it with a co-host and also have the chips and the wine that they have on their show. But, just to be able to kind of like stay current or like current events or those types of different things and still try to like I think they're doing good things. They're asking good questions. They're having great guests, like Jan Arden was their first guest, and but like asking good questions and things that matter to people, like as I'm involved in the community, I talk about sports, I talk about all sorts of stuff on my new show with AJ, but also like I care about Victoria. I care about our city, municipal politics I'm interested in. I actually had some people telling me to run for council. So, maybe who knows what'll happen 4 years from now. I might consider something like that. And yeah, maybe a little bit of politics, maybe a podcast, maybe some voice work, work for myself, do that kind of stuff. So I'll do you. Right? I'll be a Lululemon ambassador and have my own podcast and be a BC Lions in-host reporter and all that good stuff. So
I couldn't have done it without you and meeting you as my first woman in sports and getting me in
honor.
the game.
An honor.
Okay, let's ask you a couple questions. So, we talk a lot about hockey, but did you have a favorite sport growing up?
Favorite sport to watch, to cover?
Either. Is there one that kind of
my
stuck out to you
favorite
most?
Sport, it would probably be hockey, to be honest. Yeah. Just because, like I said, I grew up at the rink with my dad there in the broadcast booth. So I spent a lot of time at the rink. So hockey would probably be my number one. I think I know your number one would be soccer.
Yeah, soccer. But it's funny because when you were saying that you're an only child, so I'm an only child too. And I started to, sports were my whole life growing up.
Right.
But getting to the broadcast more and the reporting is that I would watch every single hockey game with my dad.
See?
Too. So we kind of he wasn't doing the reporting, but we would watch it every single game together. So we kind of had that connection of wanting to get into it,
Right. And that's kind of like my story too, right? It's like I was daddy's girl. I was going with my dad. We would watch hockey or sports on the TV, and that's kind of how we connected and bonded as well too, which probably pushed me towards this direction as well.
And it's so fun, like this industry, like there's so many different directions and routes you can go, right? And you might be thinking you're going one way and then it completely takes you another route and you find something else that you like. But and another thing is university. Did you take like sports broadcasting or journalism classes at all?
So I was going to university, the University of Saskatchewan, when I met a lady who owned a cable television company, and she said, "When are you going to come work for me?" And I said to her, I was like, "What do you mean?" And again, it was just an opportunity, right? Like I was working at another place. She would come in there all the time, and took her my resume, and then she hired me. So I never actually went to university for broadcasting. All of my training is practical. So, and I guess that's a good thing, but it's also like, I wish I had more of the schooling behind me. So I actually never graduated from university.
But it never took away your opportunities. Like you still got to where you were today, right? Even without it a bit. Because like when I was starting, I was like, okay, I need to get some sort of kind of university. So I was like, I'll start to take a couple of classes so that I could just put it on my resume saying I've taken this classes. But like I didn't finish a full degree or anything because then sports opportunities came up.
Right.
And I was like, okay, do I take myself out of the game and go to school, or do I take the opportunities that I've got with me right now, right? And so I was like, I'm not giving up those, so I might as well take it. And school I can always go back to. But I think with this industry too, I mean, it's probably different, but if you didn't have a full degree or something like that either, if you create your own opportunities and you're passionate about it, you're knowledgeable about it, you're strong and confident, then you can get to where you're going.
Yes.
You know?
So, and especially in this industry, I found like, and it's like, I do, like you said, what do I want to do next or when I'm done with this? And it's like, now that like I work such early mornings and I'm done like late morning, it's like, I would like to one day finish a university degree. And it's like I said, I want to learn Spanish. I want to learn a new language. There are just like different, for me, things that I want to do. And I think eventually I would like to just have the university degree, even though it's not necessarily going to open any doors for me at this point. It's certainly not going to do that in media, in this industry, right? Because it's like, I have so much practical experience that what's a diploma going to do for me now, right?
Right.
So, except maybe teach me how to use TikTok or those types of different things, because I don't have TikTok and my Instagram game is weak. So maybe if BCIT can help me get that going a little bit better, then that would be awesome.
TikTok 101.
Right? How to TikTok. See, I don't TikTok because I feel like it's not age appropriate.
I'm not a big TikToker either. I support whatever people do on it. I just haven't dabbled in it too much. So
I don't need another distraction, right?
I feel like it's a lot of work to make your own TikToks.
I know. I'm like looking at these videos and I'm like, wow.
Yeah,
who's
there's
got
a
this
lot
time,
of
right?
creative energy going into that.
Totally.
Any favorite athletes? Did you have anyone that you looked up to, an idol or anything?
Well, my favorite athlete is Steve Yzerman, right? From the Detroit Red Wings, former captain, and obviously now like he's the GM of the Detroit Red Wings again. I got a chance to interview him on a couple occasions. Once when he was in Victoria, he was here scouting. He was with the Tampa Bay Lightning at the time, and he was here scouting. It was the Subway Series at the Royals game. Yeah.
Was
it was like Russia?
The Russia one.
Russia
yes,
game.
I remember seeing him walk down the hallway.
Yeah, so I stalked him to a booth. Everybody's looking on the ice, and I went down to ice level and looked up in the suites because somebody told me he was up in one of the suites, and then I spotted him, and I'm like, that's it, I'm going. And I spotted a friend of mine that was in there, so I used my friend to get in there to talk to Steve Yzerman to do an interview. And I was glad I got to do that interview with him because when I went to I went to Kelowna to cover Team Canada training camp. I think it was 2005. My God, I'm old. And it was like Jerome McGinley, all those guys like from back there, Chris Pronger, that whole era. And Steve Yzerman came out, and Wayne Gretzky was the GM. It's the year they went to Turin. They were going to the Italy Olympics. They didn't do very well. And Steve Yzerman came out to do an interview, and it was like me and a bunch of guys standing in a scrum, and I'm right in the middle, and it was like, honestly, all I could think is, don't say anything stupid. Don't say anything stupid. So I let everybody around me ask questions just so I was like starstruck. And I didn't really get starstruck, but I was just like, and I didn't say a word. Like I was just like, don't blurt anything silly out, because like, so the reason why he's my favorite athlete is because my dad and I, as I said, grew up watching hockey, grew up watching the Detroit Red Wings. That's my dad's team. So, my connection with my dad is that's my team. So, and that was he was the man back then. So.
He definitely was. And he gave you the interview at
Save-On?
Yeah, at Save-On.
Yeah. I was so giddy that I didn't even stay for the game after that. I took my camera and tape and then just went to the station and like just said, here, you have Steve Yzerman. So, right? Well, we didn't always have professional athletes here to interview.
No, and
right?
that was a big deal because that was my first year I was working for them, for the Royals. Yeah. And it was just like a couple months after, and it was like, wow, all these people are coming in. It was phenomenal. And there were so many for that year draft picks that were coming.
That's
through,
right.
I think like Edmonton's first round draft pick was playing for Russia.
Right.
Yakupov and stuff. So it was like, it was pretty.
It was pretty intense. Yeah.
Yeah, intense. And just seeing everybody from like the Canucks radio reporters and stuff being in our little Save-On Foods arena. It was pretty cool.
Excellent. I know, it was great.
We talked about some advice, but do you have any other advice for young women looking to follow in your footsteps?
I think my only advice to any young women, don't follow in my footsteps, make your own footprints. And, there's a lot of women that I respect that work in sports now, that worked in sports, a few of them before me, and create your own opportunities, right? Like, and as you said, I don't want to do that. I don't really feel like doing that. You know what? We all have things in parts of our job that we don't feel like doing, but do them and learn as much as you can, and be like, the more you know, the more knowledge you have, the more valuable you are to any company. Be prepared, be confident, and just, You belong there. Know that you belong there, and elbows up, when you're in a scrum or something, and just like have the confidence. And even if you don't have the confidence right away, pretend that you do, right? And then you can go and shake afterwards or be like, oh my gosh, I did that, right? And then you can be really proud of yourself. So yeah, don't follow in anybody's footsteps. Make your own footprints.
I love that. Thank you so much. It has been so amazing having you here. I'm so excited we got to finally have you. And I hope that we can have you back again as like a co-host or something like that. You're so amazing. And excited to continue your journey as the host of the radio show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for tuning in.
Perfect. So that is it for this episode of Her Love of Sports. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you to our special guest, Mira Laurence.